yes.
And what grade levels do you have in there?
8th and ninth mostly, some 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I also noticed with the kids I had last year that some of them would get done with stuff early and some of them would need more time. So like for some of them, a quiz or a test would take 2 days and some of them would get it done in 1 day. And then there was that question of what do I do with the kids who are done while the other kids get their stuff done.
And so I know you had talked about this a couple of years ago, and we talked about it, and I know you had asked, like, hey, what do you think about this, which I'm totally supportive of. Talk to me about where you're at now, and, like, talk to me about successes. So, like, what successes are you having with the personalized learning? Like, what are you seeing from students that you really like right now?
I like that I'm getting more one-on-one time with kids rather than spending all my time doing direct instruction. And kids know the routine a lot better. They know that they come in, they look at the screen to see where they should be, what they should be working on. They know where to look for what's coming up, where to get the materials. So they're pretty self-sufficient with that, so they can come in and get started. And then they're getting a lot better at asking questions. I had some kids at the beginning of the year who didn't like to ask questions, but now they know that the only way that they can get the learning done is by having me come over and explain it to them, or when I walk by and ask, do you have any questions or do you need any help, they need to say yes, because otherwise they're not learning it.
And if they don't say yes, but they need help, how do you identify that?
I pay attention to where they are, so like if they're stuck on a section or if they're falling behind, then that's kind of an indicator that they're struggling a little bit. So then I will kind of help a little bit more, or when they start the next section, I'll just say, here, let me go over this real quick with you before I give them the sheet. So then they get it anyway, and then they realize that that helps them out, and then they'll be more willing to ask for help.
Our kids, do you feel like students have done, you said that they're better about answering questions. What have you tried to do with them other than, oh no, they're behind? What have you done to help students ask better questions or ask, like, what kind of things have you done?
I do a lot of modeling, so when they ask for help, I usually, instead of explaining it to them, I ask them questions. So I'm like, well, what do you know about this form? Like, what do you know about y equals mx plus b form? Or do you know the standard form? So I ask them the question so they have to think through it, and then that kind of models what kind of questions they should be asking me.
So they get to hear the questions from you, which
right.
That's kind of their practice.
Yeah.
That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So one thing I hear you saying is you feel like you've done a good job of setting up kind of the pre-planning, like students come in, they know what's expected of them to move forward, and every kid is doing something different, right?
Right.
They're in different levels. I also hear you saying that students get to go on a pace that fits them.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about what that means to you and how that's going about that pace that fits them. Like maybe philosophically, like why that's important.
Okay.
Like why that pace for them, and then what you're observing with students being at different paces and the impact on them.
Okay. So I do have a schedule for like this is due on this date or you should be done with this by this time. But I'm okay with them. And I've told them, like at the beginning of the year, I told them it's okay if you fall behind. It's okay if you go faster. Like I told them that I'll be ready for them if they're going faster, and if they're going slower, then that's okay. They don't need to stress out about being behind everyone else. I've told them that if they're further behind, like more than a week or two behind, then they might need to come in for some extra help just to make sure that they're still getting that learning in. But the philosophy behind it is that kids learn at different paces, and you know, some of them can just fly through it and math comes easy to them and they want to sit there and do their math and just do it all at once. Others struggle a lot and they need the processing time, and in order for them to understand the thing that comes next, they need to spend more time with that one thing. And it could be one section or one chapter they really understand it and can fly through it, and then the next chapter they get stuck because it gets hard for them. So it varies from chapter to chapter and kid to kid. So just giving them that chance. And I talked a lot last year with the kids that I started it with and asked them throughout the year, throughout the semester that we did self-paced, like, do you guys like this? Do you want to go back to how it was? And they all said that they didn't want to go back. And
So the
really
feedback you got from students from last year at the end was they really enjoyed that model.
Yes.
Like when you say they, like, are we talking how many students and
It was all
out
of
of how many?
them. I didn't have any kids say, no, I want to go back to the way it was.
Did they tell you why?
They said they liked that they could take their time with it and go as fast as they wanted, and that was the kids who were going slower and the kids who were going faster.
So they felt like they didn't have the stress of a timeline.
Yeah.
And some kids could jump ahead, like you said.
Right.
Talk to me about, one thing that I hear you saying sounds like students feel supported for what they need. But talk to me about the kids or the struggles you're having, or the students that are having those struggles. And talk to me about what concerns you're seeing there, or things that you're like making go, like, what do I do?
I still have the kids that try to, slip under the radar, and they don't want to do the work, and so they're going to do everything they can to not do the work. And they're the ones who don't raise their hands, they don't ask for help. So when I'm going from kid to kid who's raising their hand and asking for help, then I might not reach the ones who are just sitting there flying under the radar. And that was the same way before, and it's the same way in the classes that I don't do the self-paced.
Sure, there's a kid that sits there and doesn't get it, and you're teaching the whole class the same lesson.
Right.
And the kid's in the corner. So tell me what the difference is, how you help each of those kids. So in a traditional classroom where everybody's in the same material versus this, like, tell me how you're handling those, the same or different.
I do handle it different. A lot of it is outside of class. If I see the kid, I'll talk to them and say, like, hey, what's going on in math? And I try to do it before, like, not in the morning, but kind of close to when class is. And then I say, like, do you need help today? Or, like, I'll help you today and let's work on it. Because outside of class, they seem to be more willing to tell me that they're struggling and that they need help.
Like in the hallway?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when they get into class, and I think it's because they get into class and, like, oh, hey, there's my friends. I want to talk to them instead of doing my work. And
there's more, I don't want to say freedom, but it kind of is a little more open-ended to where a student could have that. Yeah,
but when they know, like, hey, I'm going to be working with you today in class. So either they come sit up there at my desk with me so I can be right there, and, like, as soon as I take attendance, they're like, hey, let's start this, or I'll come to them. But most of the time when I've told them, let's work on this together, they sit at the little desk over there right when they come in. So that's kind of like the, I'm going to get most of your attention today spot.
Right. So let's try and talk about something that I can help you with moving forward. Like, what are some things that you're thinking about? What are you thinking about right now with that class that you've been wondering, or things that you would like to process? And
I want to get them reading the book more, if that makes sense, like tie it more to the literacy work we're doing. So
like with professional development?
Yeah. So I'm going to try doing it on Actively Learn and have them go through that. And I know I need to be asking, like, right now I just have a note sheet that they fill out as they read the book. It follows the book, and they'll, like, fill in the blank for the vocab, and they'll write down the examples. But I don't have any, like, deeper thinking questions for them to answer, like, so they really get the concept. So I'd like to put that in on the Actively Learn, because they have to answer that to go on to the next part of it. So I feel like I can kind of force them to answer that question, whereas if it's not part of the homework assignment, they're not going to do it.
What might happen if you put those on Actively Learn and then you have those questions where that's kind of their ticket?
Yeah.
Their ticket to get to the learning for the day. What might happen, do you think, if you start utilizing those literacy strategies?
I think that they'll slow down a little bit when they're reading the section, because a lot of it is, like, a lot of what I see with the questions is like, how do I do this? I don't understand this. But sometimes I'll be like, have you read the example or have you read the question yet? And they'll say, no, it's automatically a word problem, so I know I need help.
So you're going to put another step in there.
Yeah.
That adds the literacy component before they start.
So then making them stop and think about it, I think will help them like process the information more instead of just zooming through it like they are right now, because they're not used to reading a math book in the first place. Right. So, and a lot of them just skip to the problems and then they look back in the book when they are doing the examples and they need help, but I want to get them reading it first more.
What roadblocks do you foresee implementing Actively Learn?
Computer issues. If a kid doesn't have a computer, I'm kind of worried about the amount of time that it'll take. We worked in our PLC last week on it, and I didn't even get the first section done in that time. So I'm kind of worried, especially because we're getting into the part where I have the notes all ready to go from last year, so I can see myself just not wanting to put the time into it when I could already have it ready to go.
Yeah, like your other lessons ready to go.
Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe, like I hear you saying, like, I'm worried about time. Do you feel like maybe it's something that you don't do every time? Like you just add a literacy component a couple of times until you're comfortable? Or, you know, could you possibly pick the big rocks?
Yeah,
and focus on that?
Yeah, because there's definitely sections that are kind of more important, like that they'll use more often than other sections.
Like something that goes into other standards that you know is woven into multiple standards.
Yeah.
Versus like one time.
And even multiple classes. So the stuff that I know that they'll use next year and in Algebra 2 and with the work we've done in PLC, I know that they'll use it in science class now.
Awesome. So as we kind of summarize here, tell me your next steps, because you just said you feel good about the way your classroom is set up. You feel good about the kids knowing what's expected. You feel good about, for the most part, about working on answering questions. I mean, that's an ongoing thing with all teachers. Some of the things that you're a little leery about are just like your regular classes. How do you help the kids that are behind? But it sounds like you have some things in place that you're trying. As you move forward in the next step, looking at Actively Learn and implementing kind of the literacy component, what do you feel like all of this, what do you feel like a couple of steps that you can take next with Algebra 1 that would really strengthen what you're trying to do?
I do have one student who's a little further ahead than the rest, and I've told her that I'm going to try something different for the next chapter, and I'm going to use her as my guinea pig. So
nice.
Getting feedback from her, I think will help a lot, and she'll be honest with me.
Sure.
So that'll be good, and running things by my PLC group as well, which is what we're planning on doing. Once we have stuff ready, just running it by each other.
And there's time built in for that a little bit. So when you're worried about time, you can utilize the PLC time for that specific work.
Yeah.
Right.
And that helps a lot. And I'm hoping that having it on Actively Learn will help me track faster where students are, because that's something I'm also not so great at. And they have binders that they put it into. They either put it in their binder or turn it into a bucket for me. So they're turning it in at a good time, and I see them turn it in, and like I talk to them a lot. But as far as tracking it in PowerSchool or in the Google Doc I have, I'm not very good at that.
Sure.
So just being more on top of it, I think Actively Learn would help, because that's just a really quick, they did that assignment.
Yeah.
Instead of having to go through the papers.
And that's online, so you'll have access to it. So if a kid turns something late and you're at home, and then on top of that, you can focus your questions. And we looked at in Actively Learn, you can actually collect data there, and it can compile it for you, so you can see it all in one shot, rather than going through each paper.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that just helps me streamline it a little more and be more effective with getting to the kids when they need the help, instead of maybe having them sit around for a few days.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for sitting down with me, and I hope we can get some good progress.
Yeah, hopefully.
Appreciate your work. Thanks.
You're welcome.